Pioneer viewers, how are you doing? I hope you're healthy and well. As a Pioneer team, we continue to share with you the developments regarding the Russia and Ukraine war. We will soon share with you an incredible development related to the Russian Federation. As it is known, the Russian armed forces are experiencing huge problems on the front line. And while the problems of the Russian armed forces leave day by day, the administration of the Russian Federation, which tries to solve these problems, generally fails, because the Russian people no longer want to be part of this war. Since the beginning of the war, we have been trying to share similar events with you many times, and the decisions taken by Vladimir Putin, the head of the states of the Russian Federation, caused great discomfort in the Russian people. And we've already mentioned that the Russian economy is in a severe depression because the Russian people have left the country. And there is a disruption in all the production levels in Russia. And of course, another situation is now being experienced in the service sector in Russia. According to the latest developments and the latest reports, Russian doctors are now leaving the country. So what are the developments on this issue? Let's take a look at developments together. As a Pioneer team, we continue to share our reports on Russia-Ukraine war. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily reports. You can also support me and my team by using the super thanks button below the videos. Thank you for your support. Let's start if you're ready. The Pioneer Reports. So the war between Russia and Ukraine continues at full intensity while developments continue to take place on the front line. On the other hand, incredible events are taking place behind the front lines. As it is well known, the Russian people are reacting more and more because of this war. And we were already observing that these reactions of the Russian people already had reflections, especially mass actions and protests had a very important place in this regard. The reactions of the Russian people against Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, are growing day by day. In the past days, we talked about the protests of the Russian people, and the Russian people are now very fed up with the economic problems. The Russian economy is struggling with economic problems due to both sanctions and the erroneous moves of the Russian administration. Of course, these economic problems will continue as long as war continues, and the Russian people are also aware of this situation. Therefore, the approaches of the Russian people to economic problems and the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, seems to be shaped to this extent. So the majority of the Russian people left the country from the beginning of the war, and of course, economic problems were also effective in this process. However, a more important issue was the fear of the forced conscriptions of the Russian citizens. As it is known, the Russian armed forces are suffering heavy losses due to the clashes on the front line, and these losses need to be compensated continuously. If they cannot be compensated, the Russian armed forces have no chance to continue the war on the front line, and therefore, Russian citizens lived in the fear of being sent to the war every day. And the Russian citizens who have a little more economic power save themselves by fleeing the country. So, recently an incredible report on the Russian citizens was published. As I've mentioned at the beginning of our report today, the Russian people are leaving the country, and this abandonment phase first started with the Russians with lower welfare levels, and the Russian citizens with higher welfare levels began to leave the country because now economic problems began to seriously affect them. So, according to the analysis of experts from the United Kingdom, migration in Russia increases after each mobilization decisions of the Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation. One of the professions most opposed to this mobilization decision is the doctors. As you can imagine, the possibility of doctors being sent to the front line during the war is quite high. And for this reason, doctors strongly oppose mobilization decisions. And looking at the reports proffered by UK-based experts, it is seen that doctors have been the most opposed to mobilization decisions for 2 years. So, after this information emerged, an incredible development took place. In an announcement said to have been issued by order of Vladimir Putin, president of the Russian Federation, a call was made to the Russian doctors in the country. And in this call, Russian doctors were ordered not to leave the country and to make statements to confirm their presence in the country. As it is known, Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, has recently signaled that a new mobilization will begin. And from this point of view, it can be assumed that doctors will be assigned within the scope of this new mobilization. According to local sources, there have been a major problem in hospitals within the borders of the Russian Federation in recent days. According to the claims of some sources, the Russian administration was late in warning Russian doctors because Russian doctors had already started to leave the country. For this reason, it is often stated by local sources that there are disruptions in the services in hospitals. And of course, it is necessary to look at the situation from this point of view of doctors. The statements made by the Russian doctors on social media, it is understood that the claims of local sources are largely true. The majority of Russian doctors, in their statements on their social media accounts, state that they are against mobilization and that the job of doctors is only treat. In addition, the doctors also clearly state that they don't want to face such a thing by giving an example of the fate of the doctors sent to the front line before, and therefore they will leave their country if necessary. This situation is in great danger for the Russian Federation because the losses of the Russian army on the front line are increasing, and the number of wounded Russian soldiers is also increasing. For this reason, the number of doctors required to work in the field hospitals on the front line is also increasing at the same rate. However, it seems that the Russian Federation is far from being able to meet this demand, especially in the last 2 years. 7,500 Russian doctors have allegedly left the Russian Federation, and the Russian administration may not even have enough doctors to meet the needs of the Russian citizens living not only in the front line, but also within the borders of the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation has not only suffered losses worth millions of dollars with the war, at the same time, they also lost their citizens in the most important levels of the country. Due to the losses suffered both on the front line and within the borders of the country, very difficult days face Russian Federation in the coming days. So what do you think? Do you think the successes of the Ukrainian army on the front line affect the behavior of the Russian citizens? What problems can the departure of the Russian doctors cause in Russia? And do you think Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, will be able to find a solution to this problem? Do you think the Russian economy will experience greater problems due to these problems? Specify it in the comments because I read and I care about all of your comments.